Please be seated. Well, you made it. You're here. And you can stay here as long as you like. All right? But listen, if you're ready to go before I'm done preaching, you can get up and leave. All right? But I'm enjoying this cool air conditioning in here. I'm glad we were able to get it fixed for everyone. My heart definitely goes out to those of you who are still without power. Please let us know if there's anything that you need that the church can do for you, because that's kind of why we're here. Talk briefly today about our life as Christians and our journey following Christ and with Christ. I think we're called to be transformed, and I think sometimes that transformation takes a good deal of trust, and that's what I want to talk about today, transformation and trust. This idea that we're called from being fearful people to being courageous people, from being selfish people to being selfless people, from being people who are really only interested in taking for ourselves, from people who really only think of giving to others out of the blessings that we have. I think that's the journey that we're called to be on, and that's why being a Christian is so darn hard. If it's easy, we might not be doing it the right way. All right, that's what I want to challenge myself with today. If being a Christian, following Jesus is easy, maybe I'm not doing everything that I could be doing. All right? So today, lesson from Paul, his second letter to the Corinthians, actually is a compilation of a bunch of different letters, we think, put into one letter they call the second letter to the church in Corinth. You have to understand that what Paul was trying to do, what he was faced with, is combining a bunch of different churches, a bunch of different communities with different goals, different ideas, different issues, different challenges. It's just like what we do today. It's just like the churches in Annapolis. You have the fairly well-resourced churches in St. Margaret's and St. Anne's, and you've got churches without the resources like St. Luke's, really trying to meet community needs, and you've got churches like St. Philip's that fill a niche and certainly serve a certain segment of the population, but everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Paul's goal was to take the church in Jerusalem, which was primarily Jewish, primarily poor, under-resourced, and graft it into one church with churches like the church in Corinth, which were fairly intelligent, Greek-speaking, Gentile churches, well off. They all had different goals. The church in Corinth had a whole bunch of issues that it was trying to wrestle with, issues about false teaching, direction of the church, who baptizes who can do what, who can tell who to do what. These were all going on in Corinth. These were the issues that they were dealing with. In the church in Jerusalem, they were just dealing with, how do we pay the bills? How do we make it so that members of our church can eat? How do we make it so that so that our members aren't being sold off into slavery? Right? They were all issues that the churches were facing, and Paul was trying to graft these two churches into one, saying, hey, we're dependent on each other here. This is an independent enterprise, this church thing, and we've got to give to each other. Right? The idea that the church in Corinth had been compelled, shall I say, to give to a collection. And Paul mentions this collection in a lot of his letters. The church in Corinth was giving to this collection for the saints in Jerusalem. Essentially, the rich church was giving some of its money to the poor churches for their viability. All right? And now, all of a sudden, a year later, the church in Corinth was kind of ducking its responsibility and saying, we're not really sure we want to be in on this. What do we have to do with the poor church in Jerusalem? We're in Corinth. We have our own weighty issues to deal with. We shouldn't be giving to churches that have nothing to do with us. Paul writes this wonderful piece to the church in Corinth saying, but you are connected. You do share a common vision. You have things in common, because that's one of the great reasons why we give. We give so that we can come together. I think there are a lot of reasons that we give. Some people give to a cause. Some people are cajoled by car washes and bake sales to give to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and other organizations so that they can do what they do. Whether it's a sports team, whether it's a club, whatever it is, you give towards that goal. You give towards that cause. Maybe the Kiwanis organization has a specific cause that it wants you to give to. So they might hold a fundraiser like a golf tournament or a crab bake. And they say, give to this cause. This is where the money is going to. And you say, I believe in that cause, therefore I'm going to give money. Some of you, a lot of you are pestered by alumni letters. Give to the Alumni Association. You haven't given enough. You haven't given regularly enough, whatever it is. And you give because you support your institution where you got your education, where you were brought up, things that you care about. Those are the things that you give to, the causes that you care about. Other people, though, give because it's who they are. There's one guy that I met recently, he said, I give because I've always given. I don't really know when it started. I don't really know what it was in me that grew that made me this kind of a person. But I give because I've never done it any other way. And I wish I was that person. I'm not, though. I'm selfish. I hoard. I collect. I count for myself. I count my treasure in my bank account. And I say, when I get to this line, I'm going to spend it. I'm going to spend this much on me. Right? That's what I do. It's maybe not what you do, but that's what I do. And I'm challenged with what Paul writes. This is what's called God's economy, the economy of God, the divine economy, which is we give because we were given to. Our generosity stems in large part from God's generosity. Because God has given so richly to us, we give richly to others. That's the way that it's supposed to work. It doesn't always work that way in my case, in Wall Street's case. It doesn't always work that way, where we give altruistically to others. But the point is this, we're called to be transformed to a people whose sole identity is one that we give out of our abundance. Whatever our abundance might be, whether we're Bill Gates or Peter Mayer, we're called to give out of whatever abundance we have towards those who have no abundance, towards those who are lacking our blessing. That's what we're called to do, relatively simply. We give because we were given to. And it's made clear on the cross and that kind of theology that Jesus gave what He had to us. Jesus gave His glory and His crown to us and took the shame of the cross on Himself so that we would get the glory and He would take away the death. I mean, that's a little bit more heady theology than maybe you wanted this morning. But let me share with you another story, a little different. This guy that I knew in Rhode Island, young guy, early 30s, young kids, and all of a sudden he became sick, and he went into the hospital, and it got serious really quickly, and it was septic shock. And if any of you have ever dealt with that or had someone deal with it, you kind of know what it is. It's really touch and go. And for a couple days, he was touch and go. And I remember driving up to the hospital, not really knowing what I was going to find and not knowing on the way back what I was going to go back to. He got better. He came out of it. And somehow, through the magic of medicine, he was saved. And in the time after I tried to meet with him, I kept trying to call him and say, hey, let's get together and talk about this and see where you are with it, just in a spiritual sense. And you just kind of got that sense that he wanted to keep it at arm's length, and he didn't really want to talk about it with me too much. And I didn't see him in church. He just kind of stopped coming after a while. And as a clergy, you ponder these things, and you go on walks, and it kind of nags at you, and you go to bed. And these are the things that you think about when you're clergy and you go to bed. You think, you know, what happened? What is it that took place in his soul that he doesn't want to give thanks for? And maybe it's my perception. Maybe it's just my own perception of, hey, I think he should be acting in this way, and he's not. Well, you know what? I didn't face death like he did, so that's bad on me. But I think to myself, when I've been blessed in different ways, how have I responded in ways other than gratitude, in ways other than giving? You know, I don't know. But I think that sometimes it's a challenge for us to respond in kind when we've been given to. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's our own independent nature, our own need to stand on our own 2 feet and not really rely on the goodness of others. But to me, I feel like giving back is the sincerest form of gratitude. And no one's ever become poor by giving. No one has ever become poor by giving. For me, it comes back to trust. And it comes back to the sense that God is going to give us whatever we give away tenfold in return. I could talk about people who have said, I'm going to give this money to the church, and then all of a sudden they win the lottery and they're made whole tenfold, whatever. I don't really know about that, but I do know that we're never made poor when we give. And Paul also writes to the Corinthians, look, you guys are wealthy, but you know what? We're not getting other people off the hook by you giving. He says to the church in Corinth, no one, we're not putting the pressure on you so that we can take the pressure off of other people. This is not just coming down on you. You give according to what you've been given. You give according to what you have. And I tell people this every fall when we do the stewardship campaign. I say, your gift to God is between you and God. I have nothing to do with it. Really, St. Margaret's should have very little to do with it. I mean, St. Margaret's is an institution that seeks to do the will of God, but really, your thankfulness to God is between you and God. Whatever gift you feel is right for you is right for you. And that's the end of the story. Nobody should second guess that. Nobody should say, you're not giving enough, or you're not showing gratitude in the right way. You know what you're supposed to do. You know what gift you can make that's going to mean something to you. I don't know that, but you do. And that's the challenge. That's the transformation that's got to take place. Is for us to become a people that is so innately tied to giving, so innately tied to generosity, so innately tied to the notion that whatever we possess is not ours, but rather we are stewards of it for God, and that we can give it freely away. And it comes back to us tenfold. When we take on that mantra, I think we're getting closer to where God wants us to be. Final story. This morning at the 7:30 service, there was a young man sitting here in the back, and I didn't recognize him, and he was sitting next to Arvilla, so I thought he was a friend of hers. And, I came back and exchanged the peace with him, and Arvilla said, this is so-and-so, and he wants to speak with you after the service. And I thought, oh, boy. I thought, oh, no, what's this going to be about? And so sure enough, I met him, and he's the co-artistic director of a theater company down near Sandy Point Beach. And believe it or not, their theater is out of power right now. And so he's scouting different locations to hold a show this afternoon. And, without even asking questions, I just kind of said, sure. And I thought, all right, well, hold on here, Peter. You're the rector, but James isn't here today. Hope Stinson's filling in for James today. Stuart and Sarah aren't here. Maybe they've got something going on. This isn't your space to give. But we were able to check it out. But I was pleased that my first instinct was to say, of course. Of course you can have our sanctuary and you can use it for what you'd like to do. That's why we're here. That's why St. Margaret's exists, is to be used by the community and to be agents of healing and agents of reconciliation of God's grace in the community. And when we can do that, when we can give freely of ourselves and our resources and all the ways in which we have been very, very richly blessed, we are very, very close to God. We're close to that trust, and we're close to being transformed. Amen.